The emergency signal came through every communication channel in the galaxy at once. Commander sat in the command chair of the Prometheus, watching the holographic display flicker to life with urgent red symbols. The translation took only seconds, but the message was already clear from the tone alone. Someone was screaming for help. "All civilized species of the Galactic Council," the voice said, trembling with fear. "This is the Federation. We are under attack. Our worlds are falling. We beg for assistance. Please, anyone who can hear this, help us." Leaned forward, his dark eyes scanning the data that scrolled beside the message. They were a peaceful species, known across the galaxy for their art and philosophy. They had no military to speak of. Their defense forces were little more than orbital monitors meant to track asteroids, and now something was eating their worlds. "Sir, I'm picking up council chatter," said from the communication station. She was young, barely 25, with quick fingers that danced across her controls. "The council is calling an emergency session. They're asking for military volunteers." "Volunteers," raised an eyebrow, "not deploying the council fleet." "Apparently there isn't one, sir. The council is a diplomatic body. Each species maintains its own defense forces." Stood up from his chair and walked to the main viewing screen. Space stretched out before them, endless and cold. The Prometheus was 3 months into a mapping expedition, charting the outer regions where human ships had never traveled before. They were alone out here, far from Earth, far from the rest of the human fleet. But they were also closer to space than anyone else. "What's attacking them?" he asked. His fingers moved faster. "They're calling it the swarm, sir, a parasitic species. The data here says they consume entire planets, strip them of all organic matter and move on, like locusts." "How many worlds have fallen?" 73. His voice was quiet. "In the last 6 months, multiple species. The swarm doesn't discriminate." Felt his jaw tighten. 73 worlds. He couldn't even imagine that number. Each world meant billions of lives, families, children, all gone. "Sir, Captain is on the line from Earth Command," said. "She wants to speak with you." The holographic display shifted, and Captain's face appeared. She was older then, with gray streaking through her black hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had fought in the resource wars back on Earth, before humanity had reached the stars. She knew what war looked like. "Commander," she said without greeting, "I assume you've heard the distress call." "Yes, ma'am. We're monitoring the council response now." "There isn't going to be one." The expression was grim. "I've been listening to their debate for the past hour. Every species has an excuse. They say their ships can't survive star radiation. They say their military is too small. They don't even have a military. They're all scared, scared of the swarm, scared of getting involved, scared of dying." "What about us?" asked, though he already knew the answer. "I'm volunteering Earth's forces. I've already sent the message to the council. We're going to help." Heard someone gasp behind him. It might have been, or maybe from engineering. It didn't matter. They all knew what this meant. Humanity had only joined the galactic community 15 years ago. They were still the newcomers, still trying to prove themselves worthy of a council seat. Most alien species looked at humans with suspicion or pity. Earth was a backwater world, its people primitive and aggressive. And now they were volunteering to fight a threat that had destroyed 73 worlds. "The council accepted our offer," continued. "They didn't have much choice. We're the only ones who said yes, but they're skeptical. They think we don't understand what we're facing." "Do we?" asked honestly. Smile was hard. "We're humans, Commander. We've spent our entire history fighting things that wanted to kill us. Diseases, predators, each other, our own planet. We understand fighting for survival better than anyone in this galaxy." She paused. "I'm assembling a task force, 12 ships, 3,000 Marines. You'll be part of the forward command. I need you to take the Prometheus to space and coordinate with their defense forces. Buy us time until the main fleet arrives." "Understood, ma'am." Felt his heart beating faster. 3,000 Marines against something that had consumed 73 worlds. The odds were not good, but then again, humans had never been good with odds. "One more thing," said, her voice softer now. "The aliens are going to be watching us. This is our chance to show them who we are, what Earth stands for. Don't let them down." The transmission ended, turned to face his crew, was staring at her console, her face pale. Had come up from engineering, his oil-stained hands gripping the railing. The others were looking at him, waiting for orders. "Change course," said clearly. "Set navigation for space, maximum speed." "Sir," said slowly, "that's 12 days at full burn. We don't have the fuel reserves for." "Then we'll coast the last 2 days, or we'll ask them to tow us. I don't care, we need to get there." Nodded and disappeared back down to engineering. Began entering the new coordinates. The ship's engines hummed louder as they redirected power. Walked to the viewing screen and pressed his hand against the cold surface. Somewhere out there, people were dying. People he had never met, whose names he would never know, who didn't even look human. They were dying and they had begged for help, and the galaxy had done nothing. But humanity would not do nothing. "Sir," said quietly, "I'm receiving messages from the rest of the fleet. The Aurora, the Defiant, the Thunder Bay. They're all changing course to join us." Smiled, of course they were, because that's what humans did. They helped, even when it was stupid, even when the odds were against them, even when no one else would. "Send them our coordinates," he said. "We're going to need everyone we can get." The Prometheus turned in space, its engines burning bright against the darkness. Behind it, across the vast distances, other human ships were turning too, changing course, abandoning their missions, coming to fight. The galaxy had pleaded for help, and humanities had responded. The Prometheus dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of space, and immediately every alarm on the ship began screaming. Gripped his command chair as the tactical display lit up with red contacts. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. "Swarm ships," reported, her voice tight. "They're everywhere. I'm detecting debris fields from at least 6 orbital stations. The defense grid is gone." Through the viewing screen, could see Prime. The planet was beautiful, with blue oceans and white clouds, but around it swarmed dark shapes like insects around a corpse. The swarm ships were organic, pulsing things that made his stomach turn just looking at them. "I'm being hailed by the command," said. "Audio only. Their transmitter is damaged." "Put them through." A voice came through, high-pitched and crackling with static. "Human vessel, this is Commander of the Defense Force. We did not expect anyone to come. We thought the galaxy had abandoned us." "Commander," said, keeping his voice calm. "This is Commander of the Earth ship Prometheus. We've brought help. More ships are coming. Can you update us on your tactical situation?" There was a long pause. "We have already lost. We are simply trying to evacuate as many civilians as possible before." "Where is your command post?" interrupted. "We need to coordinate." "You don't understand. The swarm cannot be stopped. They adapt to every weapon we use. They—" Commander's voice was sharp now. "Where is your command post?" Another pause. Then coordinates appeared on the tactical display. A station in high orbit, heavily damaged but still functioning. "Take us in," ordered. "Combat speed. And send word to the rest of the fleet. Tell them to arrive ready for battle." The Prometheus moved toward the planet and watched the swarm ships closely. They were attacking the evacuation transports, tearing into the civilian vessels like animals. He felt anger rise in his chest. These people had done nothing wrong. They were artists and philosophers. They had never hurt anyone. "Sir, we're being scanned by the swarm," warned. "They're moving to intercept." "Weapons free. Shoot anything that gets close." The ships opened fire and watched as metal slugs tore through the swarm ships. The organic vessels burst apart, spraying fluids into space. But more came. Always more. They docked with the command station 40 minutes later. Took Wu and with him. was his best Marine, a quiet man with steady hands. Wu was younger but fast and smart. Was their medic, small and quick with kind eyes that could turn hard when needed. The airlock cycled open and got his first look at the. They were tall and thin, with 4 arms and skin that shimmered like oil on water. Beautiful but fragile. The one who stepped forward barely came up to his chest, despite being taller. "Commander," they said, I must ask, why are you wearing your combat suits?" Looked down at his armor. It was standard marine gear, reinforced plates over a pressure suit. He had worn heavier. "This is our light armor," he said, "for shipboard operations." His 4 arms trembled. "Light armor? This would crush most of our people under its own weight. How much do you weigh, Commander?" "About 90 kilograms. With armor, maybe 120. Made a sound like wind through leaves. "That is, I weigh 31 kilograms. Our soldiers wear no armor, it is too heavy for us." Exchanged glances with. This was worse than he thought. "Show us your operations center." The command post was chaos. Rushed back and forth, their voices high with panic. Holographic displays showed world after world falling to the swarm. Walked to the central display and studied the tactical situation. It was bad. The swarm had complete orbital superiority. The evacuation was going too slowly. At this rate, maybe 10% of the population would escape before the planet fell. "How long can you hold?" asked. "Hours," said. "Maybe a day, no more." Then we changed the plan. No more evacuations. Skin flashed with color, shock realized, but the people. "We'll die if we keep running. We need to fight. Buy time for the main fleet to arrive." "Fight," his voice rose. "You saw them. We have been fighting for 6 months. We have lost every battle. What can you do that we cannot?" Pointed at the display. "The swarm concentrates on your evacuation ships. They ignore your military vessels unless attacked. That tells me something. They prioritize food sources over threats, so we become a threat." "We have tried." "Have you tried ramming them?" Went completely still. "Ramming, you mean deliberately crashing our ships into theirs?" "Yes." "That is insane. Our crews would die." "Do you have any automated cargo haulers? Old ships? Anything you can fill with explosives and send on remote control?" His 4 arms moved in what guessed was confusion. "We do, but no species uses such tactics. It is considered wasteful, inelegant." Spoke up from behind. "With respect, Commander, elegance doesn't matter much when you're dead." Over the next hour, and his team worked with the officers to plan the counterattack. It was difficult. The thought in terms of honor and dignity. They saw war as a last resort, something to be conducted with rules and restraint. Humans saw war as survival. You did whatever it took to win. Arrived from the Prometheus with a team of engineers. He took one look at the weapons and shook his head. "These are particle beams. Elegant, efficient, but low damage. The swarm probably adapted to them in the first week." "What do you suggest?" asked. Pulled out a human kinetic rifle. "This fires a metal slug at hypersonic speed. Simple physics. Mass times velocity. Can't adapt to physics." "That is primitive." "It works." Started setting up manufacturing templates. "We can retrofit your ships within about 6 hours. Won't be pretty, but they'll punch holes in anything organic." While the engineers worked, coordinated with the arriving human fleet. The Aurora came first, then the Defiant, then 6 more ships. Each one immediately moved to engage the swarm and watched as the aliens learned what human weapons could do. The Aurora fired missiles that the swarm tried to intercept, only to discover they were nuclear. The fireball consumed 100 swarm ships at once. The Defiant launched fighters that flew in patterns no could survive, pulling turns that would crush their delicate bodies. The human pilots seemed to dance through space, and the swarm couldn't track them. But what really shocked them was when Pilot volunteered to fly one of their own fighters. Tried to warn her about the G-forces. about how the combat maneuvers would knock her unconscious. Just smiled and climbed into the cockpit. Watched through the tactical feed as pushed the fighter through moves that should have been impossible. She pulled 8 in a turn, 9 in a climb, 10 in a dive. Her voice came through the comm, steady and calm, calling out targets even as the acceleration tried to push the blood out of her brain. "How is she doing that?" whispered. "Our pilots black out at 4. "Training," said simply. "And human physiology, we evolved in high gravity. Our hearts are strong. Our blood vessels are reinforced. We're built for this." "Built for this," repeated. "What kind of world builds creatures like you?" Looked at the commander. "A death world, commander, that's what the council calls it, right? Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world. Extreme gravity, dangerous predators, lethal diseases, violent weather. Most species can't even visit without dying. But we were born there, it's our home. And it made us strong." The battle raged for 30 hours. 30 hours without rest. The human crews rotated through shifts, but barely. They drank stimulants and kept fighting. They watched in amazement as the humans just kept going, kept shooting, kept flying, kept working, even when exhaustion should have killed them. Treated wounded in the medical bay using human techniques that made the doctors flinch. CPR to restart hearts, direct injections of adrenaline, field surgery with nothing but local anesthetic. "Your people are so fragile," one doctor said. "How do you survive such treatment?" Looked at the doctor with tired eyes. "We don't have a choice. On Earth, you get tough or you die." By the time the main fleet arrived, the tide had already turned. The swarm was retreating, not defeated but hurt. For the first time in 6 months, they had met something that could hurt them back. Found in the operations center, staring at the tactical display. The human commander had been awake for 33 hours, but he showed no signs of stopping. "Commander," said quietly, "I must apologize. When the council told us humans were coming, I thought it was a joke, a gesture. I did not believe you could help." Turned to look at the alien commander, and now I understand why the galaxy fears your world. You are not like us. You are harder, stronger, more dangerous. Is that a compliment or an insult? Skin rippled with color. It is a fact, and it is the reason my people are still alive. The swarm came back 3 days later, but this time they were different. Smarter. They had adapted to the human weapons, grown thicker armor, changed their attack patterns. The first wave hit the defense line and pushed through, forcing the human fleet to fall back. Stood in the command center of the orbital station, watching the tactical display with growing concern. Captain's face appeared on the holographic projector, her expression grim. "They're learning from us," said. "Every tactic we use they counter within hours. We need something new, something they can't predict." Stepped forward. He had been quiet for most of the meeting, standing in the back with his arms crossed. But now he spoke. "We need to scare them." Everyone turned to look at him. Skin rippled with confusion. "Scare them. They are not capable of fear. They are a hive mind. They only understand consumption and survival." "Then we teach them a new understanding," said. He walked to the display and pointed at a cluster of swarm ships. "They adapt to our weapons because they can study them. Energy signatures, projectile velocities, explosive yields, it's all just data to them. But fear is psychological. You can't adapt to fear." "What are you suggesting?" asked. Smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. "We make them think twice before attacking. We show them that fighting humans has a cost they can't calculate." Over the next day, worked with tactical officer to plan something the galaxy had never seen before. They called it Operation Ghost. They called it madness. The plan was simple and terrifying. Human ships would go dark, cutting all power except life support. They would drift into swarm-controlled space, pretending to be debris. Then, when the swarm ships came close to investigate, the humans would wake up. They would board the enemy vessels. "Board them," repeated, his forearms trembling. "You mean Go inside." "Yes," said calmly. He was a thin man with glasses, more scientist than soldier, but his eyes were cold. "We'll breach their hulls, enter their ships, and plant explosives. Then we leave. No species attempts boarding actions against the swarm. Their ships are toxic. The atmosphere inside would kill you in seconds." Held up a breathing mask. "We'll wear these, and our suits are sealed against chemical and biological threats. We've been dealing with toxic environments for centuries." The first boarding team launched 6 hours later. Wu led the assault, taking 20 Marines in a small shuttle. They drifted toward a swarm cruiser with all systems offline, invisible to sensors, watched through helmet cameras as they got closer and closer to the organic hull. The swarm ship was enormous, easily 3 times the size of the Prometheus. Its surface pulsed with what looked like veins, and things moved beneath the skin. Things that might have been muscles or organs or something else entirely. It made skin crawl just looking at it. "Breaching now," Wu's voice came through the comm, steady despite what he was about to do. The Marines fired cutting charges, blowing a hole in the hull. Atmosphere vented out, freezing into crystals of ice. Then the humans climbed inside. The interior of the swarm ship was a nightmare. The walls were organic, poolsing, and wet. The air was thick with spores that tried to eat through the marine suits. Things moved in the darkness, chittering and clicking. But the humans moved forward, planting explosive charges every 10 meters. "Contact," one Marine reported. A swarm creature appeared from the shadows, all claws and teeth and too many legs. The Marine shot it with a kinetic rifle, and the creature exploded into chunks of meat. More came. The swarm was responding now, sending defenders to stop the intruders. But the humans fought in ways the swarm couldn't understand. They used the terrain, hiding in the narrow passages where the larger creatures couldn't follow. They set traps, using the swarm's own biology against it. They worked as a team with a coordination that seemed almost telepathic. "Charges set," Wu reported 20 minutes later. "Extracting now." The Marines fought their way back to the breach point and jumped out into space. The shuttle picked them up 30 seconds later, and they accelerated away at full burn. Behind them, the swarm ship tried to give chase. Then the charges detonated. The explosion tore through the swarm cruiser from the inside out. The organic hull ruptured in a dozen places, venting atmosphere and fluids. The ship convulsed like a dying animal, then went dark. Dead. On the tactical display saw something he had never seen before. The swarm fleet hesitated, just for a moment, but it was there. Uncertainty, fear. "It worked," whispered. "They're afraid." "Good," said. "Now we do it again." Over the next week, human boarding teams hit 6 more swarm ships. Each mission was dangerous. Each mission cost lives. But each mission taught the swarm a lesson. Attacking humans was not worth the cost. But the humans didn't stop with boarding actions. Introduced another innovation that shocked the Allies. He called it chemical warfare. "This is a compound we use on Earth for crowd control," explained, holding up a canister. "We call it tear gas. It causes intense burning in the eyes and lungs, makes it impossible to fight." Recoiled. "That is a chemical weapon. Such things are banned by galactic law. They are considered crimes against sapient life." "It's non-lethal," said. "On Earth, police use it to break up riots. We spray it at protesters and they run away. Nobody dies. You spray your own people with chemical weapons." Shrugged. "It's better than shooting them, and it works on the swarm too. Watch." The next battle, human ships launched missiles filled with tear gas, pepper spray, and other irritants. The swarm ships flew into the clouds and immediately started behaving erratically. The creatures inside were choking, unable to coordinate. Their formation broke apart, and the human fleet picked them off one by one. "I don't understand," said, watching the battle. "How can substances that merely irritate humans cause such damage to the swarm?" "Because humans are tough," explained. She was treating a Marine who had been exposed to swarm toxins, injecting him with antivenoms that would have killed most species. We evolved on a world full of poisons and venoms. Our bodies learned to handle things that would kill you. So what's a minor irritant to us is a deadly weapon to them. The swarm began avoiding human-held sectors. Their attacks became more cautious, more calculated. For the first time, they showed signs of strategic thinking rather than just instinctive aggression. They were learning that humans were different from other prey. But the humans had one more trick, discovered it by accident during a reconnaissance mission. She had been flying her fighter through an asteroid field when swarm interceptors appeared. The chase lasted 40 minutes and flew through conditions that should have destroyed her ship. She threaded gaps barely wider than her wings. She used the asteroid's gravity to slingshot herself in directions the swarm couldn't follow. She flew in zero gravity like she was born to it. When she returned to the Prometheus was waiting in the hangar bay. "Pilot, I watched your flight telemetry. You pulled 17 G-forces in that final turn. You flew for 40 minutes without rest, making split-second decisions while under fire. You navigated three-dimensional space with no up or down, no reference points. How?" Climbed out of her fighter, sweating but smiling. "Practice. And human brains are good at spatial reasoning. We evolved as hunters. We had to track prey through forests and over hills. We learned to think in 3 dimensions. "Your biology is a weapon," said, and there was wonder in his voice. "Everything about you is a weapon. Your strength, your endurance, your intelligence, your adaptability. You are born warriors." "No," said, walking up to join them. He had been watching the battle from the command center. "We're born survivors. There's a difference." Appeared with a report. "Sir, reconnaissance shows the swarm is pulling back. They're abandoning their forward positions and consolidating around their staging world. I think they're preparing for a final stand." "Or a final attack," added. "Wounded animals are dangerous." Hologram appeared. "We've received word from the Galactic Council. They want us to establish a blockade and wait for their reinforcements. They say we've done enough. They'll take it from here." Looked at his crew. At who had taught the swarm to fear. At Wu, who had led boarding parties into hell. At who flew like gravity was optional. At who saved lives with what other species considered barbaric medicine. At who turned simple tools into weapons of war. At who planned impossible missions. "What do you think?" asked them. "I think the council will move too slowly," said. "By the time they arrive, the swarm will have regrouped, adapted again. We'll be back to square one." "I think we finish what we started," Wu said quietly. The others nodded. Even who hated violence, who spent her days healing rather than hurting. She nodded too. Turned to his hologram. "Ma'am, request permission to assault the swarm staging world. End this now before they can recover." Was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled. "Permission granted. Show them what humans can do." Stepped forward, his skin flashing with colors had learned meant determination. "The fleet will join you. We have learned from you, Commander. We have learned that survival requires more than elegance and honor. Sometimes it requires becoming like our enemies, becoming hunters." "No," said gently. "You're not becoming like your enemies, you're becoming like us, and that's different. We don't hunt for pleasure or sport, we hunt to protect. There's honor in that too." The combined fleet prepared for the final assault. Human ships and vessels side by side. The artists, the warriors and the philosophers. Together, they would end the swarm's threat once and for all. Or die trying. The swarm staging world looked like something from a nightmare. The planet had once been green and alive, but now it was covered in dark masses that pulsed with sickly light. Organic structures the size of mountains grew across the surface, breathing and shifting. This was where the swarm bred its armies, where it consumed the biomass of conquered worlds and turned it into more soldiers. The combined fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system, and immediately the swarm responded. Thousands of ships rose from the planet like a swarm of angry wasps. The space between the fleet and the world filled with hostile contacts. "Here we go," said quietly. He stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, watching the tactical display. Beside him, his four arms were clasped together in what had learned was a gesture of prayer. "All ships," Captain's voice came through the fleet channel. "This is it. This is where we end them. Remember why we're here. Remember the worlds they've taken. Remember the people they've killed. Make them remember why you don't threaten humanity." The fleet charged forward, human ships and vessels, firing everything they had. The space between them and the enemy lit up with explosions and energy beams. Swarm ships died by the dozens, but there were always more. Always more. The Prometheus took a hit that shook the entire vessel. Sparks flew from control panels, and his voice came through the comm from engineering. "Hull breach on Deck 3. We're venting atmosphere." "Seal it," ordered. "All hands combat stations." The ship shuddered again. Another hit, this one closer to the bridge. Could hear metal groaning, could smell smoke. Around him, his crew worked frantically, routing power, coordinating weapons, calling out targets. They were scared, he could tell, but they didn't stop. They never stopped. On the surface team, Marine was leading an assault on one of the organic structures. He had landed with 50 Marines, and now they were fighting through swarms of creatures that seemed to pour out of the walls themselves. The helmet camera showed chaos, explosions, gunfire, things that shouldn't exist. Took a hit. Watched through the camera feed as something like a spike punched through the Marine's armor and into his chest. Any other species would have died instantly. Grunted, broke off the spike, and kept fighting. "You're hit," said through the comm. "Fall back to the medic." "Negative, sir." Breathing was harsh, but his hands were steady as he reloaded his rifle. "We're almost through. I can make it." "That's an order, Marine." "Respectfully, sir, I can't hear you." Comms acting up. Kept advancing and could see blood spreading across his armor. The Marine fought for another 20 minutes before he finally collapsed. By then, the structure was secure. Was at the landing site, triaging wounded. She worked with speed that looked like panic but was actually years of training. Her hands moved without hesitation, cutting away armor, injecting stimulants, performing field surgery that made the medics watching her turn away in horror. "This one is dead," a medic said, pointing at a Marine who wasn't breathing. "His heart has stopped." "Then we restart it," said. She placed her hands on the Marine's chest and began compressions. Hard, violent pushes that would have broken us ribs. The alien medics watched in shock as literally beat life back into the human soldier. "How is that possible?" one of them whispered. "You are crushing his chest." "Human ribs are flexible," explained between compressions. "And our hearts are strong. If I can get it beating again, his body will do the rest." After 2 minutes, the Marine coughed and opened his eyes. He was back. The medic stared. "On our world, death is final. Once the heart stops, it cannot be restarted. But you humans can die and come back." "Sometimes," said, already moving to the next wounded. "If we're fast enough, if we're lucky." In space, the battle was getting worse. The swarm had brought their full strength to bear, and even human ships were starting to fall. The Aurora was crippled, its engines dead, drifting through the battle zone. The Defiant was taking fire from 3 directions. The ships, brave as they were being torn apart by swarm weapons. "We're losing," said quietly, studying the tactical display. "The numbers are against us." Knew he was right. They had hurt the swarm, hurt them badly, but there were just too many. The humans were tough, but they weren't invincible. They could die. They were dying. "Captain is hailing," said. There was something in her voice, something wrong. His face appeared and stomach dropped. The captain looked tired in a way he had never seen before. Behind her, the bridge of her flagship was on fire. Crew members were slumped over consoles, dead or dying. She said, and her voice was gentle, "I'm going to do something. I need you to understand why." "Ma'am." The swarm has a central hive on that planet. If we destroy it, the whole species will fall apart. They can't function without it, but we can't get to it through conventional means. There are too many of them. Understood immediately. No, Captain, no. There has to be another way. There isn't, smiled, and it was peaceful. My ship is already lost. Half my crew is dead, but my engines still work, and my reactor is still intact. Do you understand? You're going to ram them. I'm going to save everyone. That's what humans do. Looked past to someone off screen. Are you listening? The commander stepped forward. I am, Captain. Your people asked the galaxy for help. The galaxy said no, but we said yes. We came here to the edge of known space to fight for people we'd never met. We did it because we could, because we should, because that's what good people do. She paused. Remember that. When this is over, when you tell stories about this war, remember that humans died so you could live. Not because we had to, because we wanted to. Captain's voice broke. You don't have to do this, we can. You can survive. That's what you can do, that's what you will do. Turn back to, Commander, you have operational command. Get everyone out of here. That's an order. Ma'am. The transmission cut off. On the tactical display, watched as flagship turned toward the planet. It accelerated, building speed, aiming for the massive hive structure in the center of the swarm world. Other swarm ships tried to intercept, but the flagship just plowed through them. Nothing could stop it now. The ship hit the surface at a significant fraction of light speed. The reactor went critical on impact. The explosion was visible from space, a flash of light that turned night into day across half the planet. The shockwave spread outward, consuming everything. The hive structure, the swarm ships on the ground, the organic towers, all of it gone in an instant. And then something strange happened. The swarm ships in space stopped fighting. They drifted, no longer attacking, no longer evading, just floating dead in space. The hive mind whispered, she destroyed it, they can't function without it. Stared at the planet, at the spreading cloud of debris where Captain had died along with her crew. 200 people. Gone. They had sacrificed themselves to end the war. The victory felt hollow. Specialist was the one who found the swarm survivors. They were in an underground chamber, thousands of them, huddled together. Creatures that had once been part of the hive mind, now individual and confused. They were terrified, crying out in sounds that no human could understand but everyone could recognize. They were afraid. Sir reported, they're not attacking, they're just scared. I think they're children, newly spawned, they never learned to fight. Made a decision that he knew would define humanity's place in the galaxy forever. Evacuate them, all of them, take them somewhere safe, somewhere the Council can decide what to do with them. Sir, after everything they've done. They didn't do anything, they're innocent, and we don't kill innocents, that's what makes us different from them. The fleet spent the next week evacuating swarm survivors. Young ones mostly, who had never consumed a world or killed a sapient being. The Galactic Council was shocked. Other species wanted the swarm exterminated to the last creature, but the humans refused. They had fought to protect life, not to commit genocide. Established medical stations to treat the swarm young, using human medical knowledge to help creatures that no one else would touch. Worked with engineers to design habitats where the swarm could live without threatening others. Coordinated with the Council to find a solution that didn't involve extinction. It took weeks, months, but eventually they found a region of space far from inhabited systems where the swarm could be relocated. A place where they could live without harming anyone. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than genocide. When it was over, when the last swarm child had been relocated and the fleet was finally heading home, came to one last time. I don't understand you, they said. You are warriors, killers. You destroyed our enemy with brutal efficiency. But then you showed mercy to their children. You saved those who would have consumed us all. Why? Looked out at the stars. Because we're not just warriors, we're humans. We know what it's like to be hunted, to be scared, to be fighting for survival. And we know that children are always innocent no matter who their parents were. We couldn't save Captain or the crew who died with her, but we could save the swarm young. So we did. You are the strangest species I have ever encountered, said. Strong enough to destroy worlds, kind enough to spare your enemies. The galaxy will never understand you. That's okay, said. We don't really understand ourselves sometimes. We just try to do what's right. The Galactic Council chamber was enormous, built to hold representatives from 300 different species. Had never been inside before. Humans were too new to the galactic community to have much voice here. But today was different. Today, everyone wanted to hear what the humans had to say. Stood at the center of the chamber, feeling the weight of countless eyes on him. Some looked at him with gratitude, others with fear, many with simple curiosity, as if he were an animal in a zoo, something dangerous but interesting. The council speaker was a species of floating jellyfish-like creatures who communicated through bioluminescence. Its colors flashed in patterns that the translation device rendered as speech. Commander of Earth, the speaker said, you stand before this council to give account of the swarm war. The galaxy owes you a debt. Your species answered a call that all others ignored. You saved the Federation and eliminated a threat that had consumed 73 worlds. For this, the council offers its formal gratitude. There was a sound like wind through a forest. It took a moment to realize it was applause, or the alien equivalent. Hundreds of species showing approval in hundreds of different ways. However, the speaker continued and the chamber went quiet. Your methods have raised concerns. You employed tactics that many consider extreme. Boarding actions, chemical weapons, suicide attacks. You showed mercy to the enemy when extermination would have been simpler. The council must understand. What kind of species are you? Took a breath. He thought about Captain, who had died to save people she had never met. He thought about who fought for 20 minutes with a spike through his chest. He thought about bringing the dead back to life. He thought about all the humans who had answered the call when no one else would. We're, he said simply. That's what you call us, isn't it? Creatures from a death world. Earth is classified as a Class 12 hazard. Most species can't survive there. The gravity would crush you. The diseases would kill you. The predators would eat you. The weather would destroy you. Earth is a nightmare world where everything wants you dead. The chamber was silent, waiting. But we were born there, continued. We didn't choose it. We evolved there. Every day was a fight for survival. Every generation we got a little stronger, a little tougher, a little smarter. We learned to work together because alone we would die. We learned to adapt because the world kept changing. We learned to show mercy because we knew what suffering felt like. He paused, looking around at the alien faces. You asked what kind of species we are. We're survivors. That's what death worlds create. Not monsters, not killers. Survivors who know the value of life because we've had to fight so hard for it. A representative from the collective spoke up. It was a hive species, similar to insects, and its voice buzzed through the translator. You showed mercy to the swarm young. This was illogical. They will grow into threats. Maybe, acknowledged. Or maybe they'll grow into something better. We gave them a chance. That's what mercy is. That's what hope is. And yes, it's a risk. But that's what being alive is, taking risks, hopping for better. Your tactics were brutal, said a diplomat. You used weapons and methods that violate multiple galactic conventions. We used what worked, said firmly. And let's be clear, we didn't start this war. We didn't consume 73 worlds. We didn't kill billions. The swarm did. We just stopped them. If that offends your sensibilities, I'm sorry. But I'm not sorry for saving lives. Stepped forward from the delegation. His 4 arms were spread wide in a gesture of respect. If I may speak, honored council, I fought beside the humans. I watched them risk everything for people they had never met. Yes, their methods were harsh. Yes, they frightened us. But they also saved us. Every alive today owes their life to human courage. "They are grateful," the council speaker said. "No one disputes this. But the question remains, if humans are this formidable as allies, what would they be as enemies?" The chamber went silent. This was the real question. This was what everyone wanted to know. The galaxy had just witnessed what humans could do. Now they were afraid. Felt anger rise in his chest, but he pushed it down. Getting angry wouldn't help. "You're asking if we're dangerous. The answer is yes. We're very dangerous. We come from a world that tried to kill us every day, and we survived. We're strong, fast, resilient, and smart. We can fight in conditions that would kill most of you. We can endure things that would break most species. So yes, if you made us your enemy, we would be a threat." He let that sink in for a moment, then he continued. "But here's what you need to understand. We don't want to be your enemy. We want to help. When they called for aid, we came. When children needed saving, we saved them. When the war was over, we went home. We didn't ask for territory. We didn't demand tribute. We just helped and left. That's who we are." "Words are easy," the diplomat said. "Actions define us." "Then judge us by our actions," said. "We answered a call for help that everyone else ignored. We fought a war that wasn't ours. We lost good people. Captain gave her life to end the threat. 200 crew members died with her. They could have run. They could have left to their fate, but they didn't. They chose to sacrifice themselves for strangers. If that doesn't tell you who we are, nothing will." Stepped forward from the human delegation. She was small and quiet, but her voice carried through the chamber. "I'm a medic. I've spent my career saving lives. During the war, I treated humans and even swarm young. I used techniques that some species find barbaric. CPR, field surgery, aggressive intervention. But I used them because they worked. Because saving lives is more important than being polite about it. That's the human way. We do what needs to be done." Spoke next. "I'm an engineer. I built weapons during the war. Missiles, chemical dispersal systems, things that killed swarm by the thousands. I'm not proud of the killing, but I'm proud that we won, that we saved people. And now I'm working on peaceful projects, helping rebuild infrastructure, teaching other species human engineering techniques. Because we're not just destroyers, we're builders too." One by one, the human delegation spoke. Talked about flying rescue missions after the war ended. Talked about training security forces in defensive tactics. Wu talked about helping relocate the swarm young without violence. Talked about sharing human tactical knowledge so other species could defend themselves better. The council speaker's lights flickered in thought. "The council will deliberate on what has been said. But I must ask one final question, Commander. Your world made you strong. It made you dangerous. Do you resent Earth for this? Do you wish you were more like us? More peaceful? Less violent?" Smiled. "No, Earth made us what we are, and I'm proud of that. Yes, we're strong. Yes, we're tough. But that strength let us help that toughness let us stop the swarm. If we were weak and gentle like most species, we couldn't have done what needed to be done. Our death world didn't curse us. It prepared us. It gave us the tools to survive and the compassion to use those tools for good." "An interesting perspective," the speaker said. "The council will now deliberate." The next 3 hours were the longest of life. The humans waited in an antechamber while the council debated their fate. Would they be welcomed into the galactic community? Would they be feared and isolated? Would they be seen as heroes or threats? Finally, the summons came. The council had reached a decision. The human delegation filed back into the chamber, could feel the tension in the air. This moment would define humanity's future in the galaxy. The council speaker's lights flashed bright. "The Galactic Council has reached a decision. The human species will be granted full council membership, with all rights and responsibilities thereof. Furthermore, Earth will be designated as the Council's rapid response force. When threats arise that require immediate action, humanity will be called upon first." Relief washed through the human delegation. Full membership, recognition, respect. "However," the speaker continued, "this designation comes with conditions. Humans will submit to council oversight. Your military actions must be reviewed. Your tactics must be justified. You will not act unilaterally without council approval. Felt his jaw tighten. They were being leashed, controlled, put on a chain like dangerous dogs. But before he could respond, stepped forward again. With respect, honored counsel, I must object. Humanity saved my people because they could act quickly, because they didn't need committee approval, because they saw something wrong and fixed it. If you bind them with bureaucracy, you destroy what makes them effective. Other voices joined in. The delegation speaking in support of humanity, and then others, species that had lost worlds to the swarm, thanking the humans for their sacrifice, species that had been too weak to help, grateful that someone stronger had. The council speakers' lights dimmed and brightened in what had learned was uncertainty. Finally, it spoke again. Very well, a compromise. Humans will have freedom to act in emergency situations, but you will report your actions to the council afterward. You will explain your decisions. You will be held accountable. That's acceptable, said. It wasn't perfect, but it was fair. Accountability was reasonable. Being treated like adults instead of threats was all they had wanted. Then it is decided. Welcome to the Galactic Council, people of Earth. May your strength be tempered with wisdom. The humans left the council chamber to find crowds waiting outside. Aliens from dozens of species, some wanting to thank them, others wanting to see the up close. Children pointed and stared. Adults kept their distance but watched with curiosity. We're going to be famous, said quietly, or infamous, I'm not sure which. Both, said. We're going to be the species everyone calls when things go wrong. The ones who fight the battles no one else will. Is that such a bad thing? Asked. We're good at it and we can save lives. Looked at his crew. At the people who had fought beside him, bled beside him, risked everything because it was the right thing to do. They were tired. They were, but they were alive. Captain told us to show the galaxy who we are, he said. I think we did that. We showed them that humans don't back down from fights. We don't abandon people in need. We don't quit just because the odds are bad. And we don't become monsters just because we're strong. So what now? Wu asked. Now we go home, said. We rest. We remember the ones we lost. And when the next call for help comes, we answer it, because that's who we are, that's what do. Far away, on a planet that had been dead and was now being rebuilt, artists were creating a memorial. It was enormous, carved from stone and metal, depicting the battle against the swarm. At its center was a human figure, standing tall despite wounds, holding a rifle in one hand and reaching out to help with the other. Beneath it were words in both and human languages. They came when no one else would. They fought when victory seemed impossible. They showed mercy when vengeance would have been easier. They proved that strength and kindness are not opposites. This is what we learned from the of Earth, that the fiercest warriors can also be the gentlest protectors. The galaxy would remember the swarm war for generations. They would remember the species that consumed worlds. They would remember the desperate plea for help that went unanswered. But most of all, they would remember the humans. The who responded when the galaxy pleaded. The species too stubborn to quit, too strong to break, and too kind to become the monsters their strength could have made them. They would remember that when the galaxy called for heroes, humanity answered. Not because they had to, not because it was easy, but because someone needed help, and that was reason enough. That was the human way. That was the lesson Earth had taught its children. Survive, yes, but also protect, help, hope, because in the end, strength without compassion is just another form of weakness. The had responded, and the galaxy would never be the same.